Steve, welcome to the show. Lots to cover. You have innovative products and they're unique to the market. So I want to kind of jump back to the beginning before we go into some of what Safescape is offering. Just sort of tell the company's story to kick off the show, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jerrod. Safescape's unusual in that we started not as a service company, but as a product company. And the reason for that was prior to Safescape, I worked for a mining contractor. And during my time working as an underground mining contractor, I spent some time as an air leg miner or a jackleg miner. And most of the work that I did in that role was raise mining. In North America, it might be called bald-headed raising. In Australia, it's called ladder rising. But essentially, that role is to open the voids that escapeway ladders go into, or for slots for production long hole stoping. Because my job was to mine the raises that the escapeway ladders went into, I was often asked to go and fix broken, rusted, rotted steel and timber ladders, or smash the salt crystals off the rungs. And it was not a job that I enjoyed doing. And it was quite frustrating because I would see these galvanized steel ladders that were installed in mines that lasted only a couple of years before they would start to fail. Mm. And during that experience, the concept of a fully enclosed modular plastic escapeway ladder came into my mind. And so I looked into it. No one had done it before. I patented the concept and then spent 5 years trying to find someone else who would take that idea and commercialize it. Because at that time I was a mining engineer, I was a miner, I was really enjoying working underground and running projects. I didn't really have a desire to go and become a manufacturer and sell and install escapeway ladders. But after 5 years of not being able to convince anybody that it was a good idea, I jumped out and started Safescape to develop that concept myself. So once we started to build a team and we built the prototype of the product, people could see it. Then all of a sudden I thought, oh yeah, this is a good idea. And so yeah, Safescape started as a product company, and within a year we had our own manufacturing facility to manufacture that product.
What do you think, when you're going around and trying to get someone to pick it up, what were some of the reasons? I mean, and I asked that because I'm looking at the product and it's hard, and I've got these before and after, like what they used to do and now what your product, I mean, it's hard to see why someone wouldn't think it was a good idea. So I'm actually curious, what were some of the reasons that people didn't want to look at
it? Imagination. I think certainly here in Australia, we have a tendency to believe something once we've seen it, because so many things that work in other industries don't work in the underground environment because of the corrosion, because of the blasting, because there's lots of really nasty sort of environmental issues around that mining environment where you soon get to a point where you believe that it's got to be pretty special to work down here. And aside from the use of polyethylene service pipe, we weren't really using plastic for anything underground at the time. And so it was just, you can't use plastic for a structural product, forget about it. Whereas once we actually physically showed people the product, and that's what we did. After doing the first installation at the Fosterville gold mine in Bendigo, Victoria, we actually set up a trailer with a 6-meter segment of our escapeway and drove around, did a few thousand kilometers visiting mine sites and actually setting it up in their car park so that they could hit it with a hammer, climb up it, actually feel what it feels like. And certainly once they see it and feel it, they go, oh, no, this makes sense because it keeps the water out, it keeps the rocks out, it's more comfortable to climb. It clearly will never corrode the way that a steel or a timber and steel ladder does. So once you can actually physically experience it, it's much, much easier to take a positive opinion.
Was it when you decided to take it out to the market yourself? Was it harder or easier than you expected? That covering that 3,000 miles, that sort of boots on the ground type style. Um, was it what you expected when you actually decided to take it on yourself?
It was a mixture. I mean, I did expect to receive some pushback, and I certainly received some pushback, particularly from a few older miners who are a bit gruff and, oh, you can't use plastic, rah, rah.
Right.
There's a little bit of that action. But even some of the more experienced older people in the industry, they would sit down, they'd go quiet. And when you see them go quiet in that meeting, you know that their head's ticking away, going, hang on a second, this isn't a bad idea. Maybe we should give it a crack. And so it was actually some of those older, more experienced people that did give us a crack. And once we were on and working with them, the benefits are not just easier to climb, safer to climb, doesn't corrode. It's really fast and easy to install, and you can install it into a smaller diameter race than was previously possible. And so the economic benefit was significant for them. So they would see that, they would decide, well, the risk isn't huge for us to try this, and once we've tried it, we'll know for sure. And that's what got us across the line, because these mines don't contract for 10 years supply of Escapeway ladders. They do a 20-meter ladder at a time, or an 80-meter, or whatever it is that they have to do.
Right.
So it's a discrete risk that they were taking.
And now where has it grown to? I mean, right now you've got you're in Australia, but you're distributing in the US, or what's your setup now? What's your reach?
Yeah, we've supplied more than 50 kilometres of Escapeway ladders to 23 countries around the world.
Well,
120 something mines.
is there, I mean, does diameter, I hate to ask too simple of questions, but does diameter change, does design change, or is this a product that you say, no, this is how it works, and the customer knows exactly what they're getting? Is there a customized element? I mean, obviously distance and things like that, but what's sort of the setup for different types of applications?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We designed it to meet the various standards around the world in terms of design, and so that it would be safe and relatively easy to climb when you're wearing breathing apparatus in an underground emergency, which is one aspect of the product. And so because we took into account all of those things, we designed the shape to optimize one product meeting essentially meeting every country's or province's requirements. Now, we couldn't quite do that because in Canada in particular, it's not a countrywide set of standards when it comes to underground escapeway ladders. It's provincial. And in one case in Quebec, they actually have a requirement that the diameter of an escapeway be larger than what the Laddertube product is. And as a result of that, for a very long time, we couldn't supply ladders into Quebec. However, at a point in time about 6.5 years ago, Glencore, who had used our escapeway ladders in other countries, wanted to use it in their operations in Quebec. And not being able to, they decided that they would try to change the legislation in order to be able to use it. So they set about changing the legislation. It took them 6 years to do that. And they canvassed widely. You know, we supported them. We come for some meetings. We provided information, all that sort of stuff. But it really was Mian Hersa, who's based in Montreal, for Glencore, organising all of these different parties to come together and risk assess and decide, you know, is this legislation worth changing? What's the value? Determining that there is value in doing it. And then they literally went through that process for 6 years. Late last year, the legislation was published, and at the same time, Glencore started to use Laddertube in their mine at Raglan. And I'm not sure how many meters they're up to now, but they're certainly ramping it up.
Yeah, I mean, it must be, for a company like them, it must be so frustrating if you couldn't put that in. I mean, it's one of these products. It's almost like it's just like show the picture of the old one and the new one side by side, and you kind of tell the tale. But so it must be so frustrating them knowing. I mean, it's labor's not cheap, drilling's not cheap. reinforcements
Exactly.
not, maintenance, like all these things are very expensive operations.